All right, let's dive in. Today, we're heading to a place you might not expect for incredible wines, Serra Catarinense, Brazil. You guys sent in some seriously interesting articles, and I gotta say, I'm already hooked by this unexpected wine paradise.
It is amazing how a region known for its lush green mountains and crisp air has become a haven for, world-class
I know,
wines.
right? It's like this hidden gem nestled right in the heart of Brazil, crafting these incredible wines against all odds. And that's what really gets me. The story of Serra Catarinense is one of sort of like defying expectations, turning challenges into triumphs.
Exactly. When you think of Brazilian wine, Serra Catarinense doesn't immediately come to mind, right? I mean, it's a pretty new player in the fine wine scene. But what they're doing is really remarkable.
Okay, so let's rewind a bit for context. The articles mention that winemaking in Santa Catarina dates back to the 19th century. But we weren't exactly talking award-winning, like, bottles back then, right?
Yeah. Not quite. Early winemaking was, centered around something called Vinho Colonial. Just think, simple table wines made just for local consumption, often crafted by Italian immigrants who brought their winemaking traditions with them.
Okay, interesting. So how did this shift happen? Like, when did Serra Catarinense decide to aim for the big leagues?
The turning point was in the 1990s. There was a group of visionaries who recognized the potential of this unique terroir, this potential to produce these high-quality wines that could compete globally. They started planting classic European grape varieties, Chardonnay and Merlot, and they even experimented with some lesser-known Italian grapes, adapting these varieties to the kind of challenging high-altitude conditions.
I can imagine it must have taken a lot of convincing to get people on board with this idea, like transforming a region known for simple wines into this fine wine destination. That must have been a pretty big uphill battle.
Oh, absolutely. It took, the dedication of some really passionate individuals, but also collaboration with some research institutions like IPGRI and UFSC, and also strategic investment in technology to get things really moving. And, organizations like Acavitas also played a big role in promoting the region and advocating for policies that would support the growth of its wine industry.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. Okay, so let's talk about what makes Serra Catarinense so special for growing these great wines. The articles all mentioned this high-altitude paradise for grapes. I'm picturing stunning landscapes. But how does that actually impact the wine itself?
Well, the altitude is a defining characteristic of this region, for sure. The vineyards are perched anywhere from 900 to 1,400 meters above sea level, so yeah, breathtaking views, definitely. But it also has a huge influence on the grapes themselves. You're talking like crisp mountain air and dramatic temperature swings between hot days and cool nights.
Okay, this is where it gets interesting to me. We're talking about a region that experiences frigid winters and even occasional snow, right? How do the vines even survive there, let alone produce award-winning wines? I mean, wouldn't you think that kind of extreme cold would be a major obstacle?
You would think so, right? But that's the beauty of Serra Catarinense. They've actually turned these challenges into advantages. Those frigid winters force a slow and steady grape maturation, which is actually a good thing.
Wait, slow ripening is a positive thing. How so?
Think of it this way. Slow ripening allows the grapes to develop these more complex aromas and retain a higher level of acidity, which is super important. It's all about balance, right? And that's where those dramatic temperature swings really help. The hot days let the grapes ripen enough, while those cool nights preserve those amazing aromas and that all-important acidity. It's like this delicate dance between nature's extremes.
Okay, I'm starting to see why this region is so unique. So what about sunshine at that altitude? I bet those vineyards are basking up there.
Yep. You bet. Abundant sunshine at that high altitude. It plays a crucial role in boosting the production of phenolic compounds in the grapes. Those compounds are key for developing color and aroma and structure in the wine. So they contribute to those complex and elegant flavors that Serra Catarinense is becoming known for.
So you got the altitude, the temperature swings, the sunshine. It's all coming together, it seems like. But what about the soil? Does Serra Catarinense have that magical wine-friendly earth too?
You bet it does. The predominant soil type is volcanic, basalt-rich, and perfect for growing those vines. This kind of soil is well-drained and mineral-rich, and that translates into those wines with that distinct mineral character that people love, but it's not, one size fits all. You also find granite and sedimentary soils in the mix, and that adds another layer of complexity and diversity to the terroir.
Wow, so that variety in the soil types must create some really interesting microclimates, like little pockets where the growing conditions can vary even within a small area.
That's exactly what happens. The mountains and the forests and the rivers all create this patchwork of microclimates, and there are subtle variations in temperature and humidity, even in small areas. And this, of course, influences the grapes, which adds, nuance and depth to those final wines.
So it's like each bottle is capturing the essence of its own little corner of Serra Catarinense, but with all these seemingly ideal conditions. Which grape varieties are really thriving in this environment? I'm dying to know what surprises this region has in store for wine lovers like me.
Well, that's the really exciting part. Serra Catarinense isn't just about replicating those classic European styles. Winemakers here are embracing the challenge, adapting different grape varieties to this, unique terroir, and the results are really fascinating.
Right, spill the beans. Which grapes are really stealing the show in Serra Catarinense?
Okay, so let's start with the whites. Chardonnay, for example, is a real champ here. It adapts really beautifully to that cooler climate, producing those wines with really vibrant citrus and apple notes, and often with delicate floral aromas, especially when they've been aged in oak barrels.
Ooh, I do love a good oaked Chardonnay.
I got
Okay, but what about Sauvignon Blanc? I always associate those with those grassy, herbaceous flavors. But does it retain that character in a cooler climate like this?
That's the surprising thing. Sauvignon Blanc is actually thriving in Serra Catarinense. You still get those classic grassy notes, but they're often intertwined with more pronounced, tropical fruit flavors, like passion fruit and lime. It adds a whole new dimension to the wine.
Wow, interesting. I wouldn't have expected that. Okay, are there any other white grapes that are catching your eye?
Well, Riesling Italico, also
Huh.
known as Welsh Riesling, it's
Yeah.
another one that's worth, seeking out. It's a highly aromatic variety, bursting with floral notes and citrus zest and a distinct minerality. And, thanks to that cool climate, it maintains that wonderful acidity, which makes it so food friendly. Pinot Grigio is also doing well here, producing those classic light-bodied, refreshing wines with those crisp citrus and apple flavors.
Okay, you've officially piqued my curiosity. Now let's move on to the reds. What's making waves in Serra Catarinense?
Well, Merlot is a star performer in this region. It loves that cool climate, producing these smooth, elegant wines with ripe red fruit aromas and silky tannins. Think cherry, plum, and a hint of chocolate. Cabernet Sauvignon is another grape that's doing really well here, known for its structure and complexity, those classic black currant and spice notes, and often a subtle herbaceousness, which adds another layer of intrigue.
I'm noticing a trend here. Lots of elegance and finesse in these Serra Catarinense wines. Okay, but what about Pinot Noir? Is the grape of delicacy and nuance. Does it manage to thrive in this cooler climate?
Well, Pinot Noir is actually very happy in Serra Catarinense. It
Correct.
loves those cool nights and that long, slow growing season. It allows the grape to develop those beautiful, delicate aromas like fresh red berries and flowers and those earthy spices, with a bright acidity that keeps everything in balance.
You're really selling me on this region. Are there any other red grapes that are showing, promise?
Cabernet Franc is one to watch. Gaining popularity, it's producing wines with these vibrant red fruit flavors and a hint of herbaceousness and a kind of spicy kick. And, what's really exciting is winemakers here are constantly experimenting. They're really pushing the boundaries of what's possible, trying out new varieties, particularly Italian grapes like Sangiovese and Montepulciano, to see how they adapt to this unique terroir.
That's awesome. It sounds like there's a real spirit of innovation.
Definitely, there's a lot of exploration, for sure, in Serra Catarinense.
I love that. But, I have to ask, what about sparkling wines? We know that cool climates can be ideal for producing bubbly. So is Serra Catarinense embracing the fizz.
Absolutely. Sparkling wine is a specialty here. The cool climate is perfect, for preserving that acidity, which is so essential for producing those lively and refreshing bubbles. And you'll often find that winemakers are using the traditional method, just like in champagne. So that results in those sparkling wines with incredible complexity, finesse, and those characteristic yeasty, biscuity notes.
Okay, so now we have a clear picture of the climate, the soil, the grapes. But let's talk about the people behind these, incredible wines. What can you tell us about the viticultural practices in Serra Catarinense? I imagine it takes a lot of skill and dedication to grow grapes at such high altitudes.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Winemakers are constantly adapting their techniques, overcoming the challenges of this unique environment. It's a real testament to their resilience and ingenuity.
Give us some examples. What are some of the specific practices they use?
We'll take pruning, for example. The timing is so crucial in Serra Catarinense.
Mm.
Because of those late frosts, they often employ a technique called short pruning, which helps protect those delicate buds from the cold. Vine training is also essential. They mainly use the espalier system, where the vines are trained along wires to maximize that sun exposure, which is so important in a region that can experience limited sunlight during certain times of the year.
That makes sense. And I imagine disease control is also a major concern, right? Especially with the cool, damp conditions you mentioned earlier.
You're spot on. Fungal diseases are a constant threat in that kind of climate. So winemakers are super vigilant about preventative measures, using integrated pest management strategies to protect those vines. And they have to be smart about irrigation too. Drip irrigation is common here, helps manage those water resources efficiently, especially during those drier periods.
It's not just about like growing grapes, it's about protecting them, nurturing them in this challenging but also very rewarding environment.
Okay, what about the winemaking itself? Are there any techniques that really stand out in Serra Catarinense?
Well, winemakers here are striking that balance, between modern technology and traditional methods. So for white wines, they often use cool fermentation in stainless steel tanks, which helps preserve those fresh, vibrant aromas and flavors that we were talking about earlier.
Interesting. What about for red wines? What kind of techniques are they using to create those elegant, complex flavors?
For reds, it's all about meticulous attention to detail. They carefully manage maceration. That's the process where the grape skins soak with the juice, extracting color and tannins. And temperature control is also key, of course, to ensure a slow, even fermentation. And they'll often use techniques like pump-overs, circulating the juice over the skins to further enhance those, complex aromas and flavors. And oak aging is also used, but selectively, depending on the style of wine they're aiming for. Gotcha, that makes sense. And what about those delicious sparkling wines? What's the secret to their success?
As I mentioned earlier, that traditional method is really reigns supreme for sparkling wine production in Serra Catarinense. It involves that second fermentation that takes place right in the bottle, creating those fine, persistent bubbles and adding layers of complexity and those biscuity, brioche-like notes that we associate with those high-quality sparkling wines.
It's fascinating how every step, from the vineyard to the bottle,
Yeah.
is so influenced by this unique terroir of Serra Catarinense. But I'm curious, are the winemakers just simply letting the grapes speak for themselves? Or are they actively trying to, shape the wines
Yeah.
to reflect a certain style?
Well, Serra Catarinense is all about showcasing the unique character of the region. You'll find that many winemakers are embracing this minimal intervention winemaking, just letting the grapes and the terroir express themselves, naturally. And they're increasingly using indigenous yeasts too, the yeasts that are native to the region, adding another layer of complexity and authenticity to the wines.
So it sounds like they found that sweet spot between respecting tradition and embracing, modern innovation.
Hmm.
But let's be real, this all sounds almost too perfect. Surely there must be some challenges they face, even in this winemaking paradise.
Well, aside from the ones we've already discussed, frost is a constant threat, especially during those late spring frosts. Winemakers have to be prepared, using techniques like overhead sprinklers and vineyard heaters to protect those vulnerable buds. They're also dealing with the issue of low light levels, during certain times of the year. It's just a factor of the region's location and topography.
So even in paradise, there are hurdles to overcome. How do they deal with that low light challenge? It seems like that would be a major obstacle to, grape ripening.
It is a challenge, but winemakers have adapted. They're careful about, selecting grape varieties that are known to tolerate those lower light conditions.
Yeah.
And they also use strategic vineyard management techniques like pruning and trellising to maximize the sun exposure for those vines.
It really is a constant dance with nature, isn't it? Always adapting, always innovating, always striving to produce the best possible wines. And that's what I find so inspiring about Serra Catarinense. Okay, but enough about the challenges. Let's shift gears back to the pleasure. Describe the sensory experience of drinking a Serra Catarinense wine. What can our listener expect when they finally get their hands on one of these bottles?
You're in for a real treat. The reds, well, imagine, these intense aromas of fresh red fruits, maybe like raspberry and blackberry, even a touch of plum, often with those subtle hints of violets and a whimper of spice and minerality. And then on the palate, you'll experience that lively acidity, those smooth tannins, and a finish that just lingers beautifully.
Okay, I'm sold on the reds, for sure. What about the whites? Paint me a picture of that sensory experience.
Okay, picture this. A crisp, cool evening in the mountains. Now bring to mind those vibrant aromas of citrus fruits, maybe grapefruit and lemon zest, intertwined with delicate white flowers and a touch of, the wet stone minerality. On the palate, they're so refreshing, with that bright acidity that lifts the flavors and that distinct mineral character that adds complexity.
Sounds amazing. Okay, now the sparkling wines. I'm imagining something truly special.
Oh, you won't be disappointed. Think of those tiny, delicate bubbles, dancing on your tongue, and then you're hit with those complex aromas, maybe white peach and lemon, a touch of honeysuckle, and that lovely hint of toasted bread from that traditional method. It's an experience that really captures the essence of Serra Catarinense, I think.
All right, I need to get my hands on a bottle of Serra Catarinense bubbly, like ASCP.
Yeah.
But we can't forget about food pairings. What are some regional dishes that would really make these wines sing?
Well, the cuisine in Serra Catarinense, it has these wonderful European influences blended with those, traditional Brazilian flavors. Imagine hearty mountain dishes. I think a Pinot Noir would pair so beautifully with like a roast chicken or a creamy mushroom risotto. And that Chardonnay we were talking about, that would be lovely with some grilled fish or even a shrimp pasta.
Ooh, yeah, that sounds good. What about the Sauvignon Blanc with those pronounced tropical fruit flavors? I bet that would be amazing with something light and fresh.
You're right on track. A fresh salad or some grilled vegetables, that would be the perfect complement.
Makes sense. And sparkling wine. That's like the ultimate crowd pleaser.
Oh, absolutely. From appetizers to desserts, sparkling wine is always welcome at the table.
Before we wrap up, are there any specific producers or wineries that our listeners should keep an eye out for? Names that really embody the spirit of Serra Catarinense winemaking.
Oh, there are so many talented producers in this region, but a few names that come to mind are Villa Francioni. They're real pioneers, known for those exceptional Chardonnay Merlot. Perico is another standout, crafting a whole range of those high-altitude wines, including some incredible sparkling wines.
Nice, nice. Are there any producers that are, bringing those Italian influences to the forefront?
Absolutely. Leone di Venezia is a great example. They're producing some delicious Prosecco alongside their Pinot Noir and Merlot. And then there's Villaggio Bassetti. They're a family-run winery, making beautiful expressions of Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Riesling Italico.
Okay, I'm taking notes. Any others?
One more worth mentioning is Quinta da Neve. They're in Saint Joachim, known for their Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, and Chardonnay.
Wow, so many incredible wines to discover. And the fact that these wines are winning awards at prestigious competitions all over the world really solidifies Serra Catarinense's place as a rising star in the wine world. It's exciting to see this region gaining recognition for its unique wines.
It really is inspiring to see how far they've come in such a short time.
Okay, so for our listener, who's now eager to, experience Serra Catarinense wines firsthand, any quick tasting tips to help them fully appreciate those unique bottles?
Sure. I mean, it's always important to pay attention to the serving temperature.
Yeah.
Whites and sparkling wines, they should be nicely chilled, while those reds are best enjoyed slightly below room temperature. And of course, using the right glass can really enhance the aromas and flavors. But most importantly, take your time. Swirl, sniff, sip, and savor every moment. Let those flavors unfold and transport you to the heart of Serra Catarinense.
Yeah, good advice. For me, what stands out about Serra Catarinense is this incredible story of a region that's, defied expectations to create something truly special. These wines are a testament to that passion, that innovation, and that deep respect for terroir that you find in the winemakers there.
It's amazing to see how much this region is achieving, especially considering how quickly it's all evolving. It really makes you wonder, what does the next decade hold for Serra Catarinense wines? Will we see new grape varieties emerge as, stars? Will these wines finally gain that, international acclaim?
It's a fascinating thought. We'll definitely be watching closely, that's for sure. And to our listener, we encourage you to seek out these wines and taste them for yourself. You might just discover your new favorite wine region. Cheers to Serra Catarinense and its bright future.